Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're digging into a story that completely flips everything we think we know about global superpower competition. Usually, when we picture that kind of rivalry, we're thinking about trade wars, tense diplomatic summits, or military posturing. But right now, a single physical structure in Ethiopia, the Bishoftu Mega Airport, is literally rewriting the global geopolitical playbook. Let's dive in. $12.5 billion. Let that number just sink in for a second. This absolutely staggering figure is so much more than just a price tag for an infrastructure project. Right now, it is the ultimate geopolitical prize. It's the center of a massive, high-stakes race for influence between the United States and China. And to really grasp why the world's biggest economies are fighting tooth and nail to get a piece of this pie, we need to look at exactly what that $12.5 billion is actually buying. Section 1. Africa's biggest aviation mega project. Okay, on the surface, this might just look like a story about an airport, but it's really about who gets to build Africa's next economic superhub. And the Bishoftu project, its scale is just mind-boggling. We're talking 4 massive runways with the capacity to handle up to 110 million passengers every single year. Construction is already underway, and they're pushing for a 2030 completion date. To put that 110 million passenger number into perspective, that's going to make Bishoftu one of the absolute busiest airports on the entire planet. Modern airports, they aren't just places where planes land anymore. They're these sprawling logistical, trade, and investment hubs. So whoever helps build them gets to shape regional economic influence for decades. Now, at the heart of all this ambition is the main protagonist of our story, Ethiopian Airlines. You really can't understand the hype around this airport without looking at the airline backing it. They just reported a record-breaking, absolute bumper year, moving 20 million passengers and seeing a 20% growth in revenue. They're already the largest gateway into and out of Africa, and they easily rank as one of the top 30 airlines globally. Their sheer financial success is basically acting like a giant magnet, pulling in global financial titans who see a highly profitable enterprise ready to explode in growth. And here is the real kicker. They aren't just going out with their hands out asking for money. They have serious skin in the game. Ethiopian Airlines is investing $610 million from its own coffers just for the initial construction phase in the first year alone. When global capital markets see that, they don't see some risky pipe dream. They see an incredibly successful, highly liquid enterprise putting its own massive capital on the line. And for sure, that makes the whole project incredibly attractive to outside powers. Section 2. Washington versus Beijing. So with a project this bankable and this massive, it was absolutely bound to spark a direct, head-to-head competition between the two biggest economies on Earth. Let's look neutrally at what Washington and Beijing are actually bringing to the table here, because they have totally different toolkits. On the one side, we have China, bringing its highly experienced state-owned construction firms and massive civil works capabilities. On the other side, the United States is coming in with cutting-edge Boeing aircraft, advanced GE aerospace technology, and incredibly deep private Wall Street capital. Both sides desperately want a piece of this $12.5 billion pie. But to really get the dynamics here, we have to look back a bit. For nearly 2 decades, China has been Ethiopia's largest infrastructure partner. Beijing's track record there is undeniable. They helped build the Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway, they financed massive industrial parks, and they completely expanded Ethiopia's telecommunication networks. We're talking billions in development loans. So naturally, Chinese state-owned companies are already the heavy favorites for the civil construction contracts at Bishoftu, simply because they've dominated this exact space for 20 years. But listen, Washington is actively trying to break that monopoly. The U.S. government, including a big focus from the Trump administration, has made it crystal clear they want to force their way into this space using private American finance and high-tech aviation. And it's working. Ethiopian Airlines already has over 100 Boeing aircrafts on order. That is worth tens of billions of dollars, and they'll all be powered by GE aerospace engines. On top of that, the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, the Exim Bank, and Wall Street are all lining up to finance parts of this project, making sure China isn't the only player in town. Moving on to Section 3, Ethiopia's strategic geographic advantage. So you might be wondering, why are these two absolute heavyweights fighting so intensely over this specific nation? What's the big deal about Ethiopia? Well, it all comes down to geography and demographics. Ethiopia holds incredible strategic leverage. First off, it's home to the headquarters of the African Union. It boasts a population of over 120 million people, making it Africa's second most populous country. Plus, it sits right at the gateway to the Horn of Africa, connected to the Red Sea and literally just minutes away from the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is one of the world's most critical shipping routes. This isn't just about pouring concrete for an airport. It's about locking down influence at a vital global crossroads. Section 4. Refusing to choose sides. Historically, African nations have often found themselves pressured to pick a side, right? Align with the West or align with the East. But Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government is completely rejecting that old, outdated geopolitical model. Just look at the diverse sources of financing pouring into this thing. Ethiopia is effectively inviting the entire world to compete. You've got American banks, Chinese state-owned entities, European financiers, highly liquid Gulf sovereign wealth funds, and major African institutions all jumping into the mix. Actually, the African Development Bank has already committed $500 million just to lead the financing mobilization. The level of global interest here is blowing initial expectations completely out of the water. So their whole guiding philosophy can be summed up perfectly in this one quote: "Let the superpowers compete. Let Ethiopia benefit." It's brilliant. They are smartly taking the global rivalry between Washington and Beijing and using it as an engine for their own national development. They aren't turning anyone away. They're welcoming Chinese civil engineering right alongside American aerospace technology and Middle Eastern capital. Section 5. Overcoming the prejudicial premium. Now, it's one thing to say you want global capital. It's a whole different ballgame to actually get it. Geopolitical commentator and investment banker Zinaguritu provides some really essential context here with a concept he calls the prejudicial premium. He explains that historically, just the mere perception of risk in Africa has deterred global financiers way more than the actual risk on the ground. Because of this skewed perception, African nations are often forced to pay premium interest rates, this prejudicial premium, that simply don't match the actual viability of their projects. To get Wall Street and the Gulf funds on board, Ethiopia had to completely shatter this perception. And here is exactly how they pulled it off. Step 1. Mitigate that perceived risk by throwing down $610 million of their own cash. Step 2. Package the project so it's entirely bankable. They aren't just pitching some generic infrastructure idea, they're pitching a concrete expansion of an already dominant aviation hub. Step 3. Showcase undeniable financial results to the world. By pointing to their 20% revenue growth and massive fleet expansion, they totally de-risked the investment. And the result? Global banks are now offering incredibly attractive financing rates for Bishoftu simply because the numbers speak for themselves. Section 6. A new African template. Let's zoom all the way out for a second because what is happening in Bishoftu is setting a massive precedent that could ripple across the entire continent. We are literally witnessing the birth of the new Africa template. This is a strategic development model where host countries actively leverage superpower competition to maximize their own investment. So instead of aligning with a single political bloc and shutting everyone else out, these nations act as the orchestrators. They define exactly what they need and let the world's deep capital markets and tech giants fight for the opportunity. And this brings us to the ultimate takeaway of our explainer today. The Bishoftu Mega Airport proves that rival superpowers can actually work simultaneously on the exact same mega project as long as the host nation structures it correctly. China brings its unmatched civil works experience, the US brings its high-tech aviation and deep private capital. They deploy their comparative advantages side by side entirely for the host country's benefit. It's an absolute game changer. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today. As we watch these 4 massive runways take shape ahead of 2030, we really have to ask, will Ethiopia's $12.5 billion airport rewrite the geopolitical playbook not just for Africa, but for the entire global south? If this template succeeds, it proves that developing nations don't have to just be pawns in a superpower rivalry. They can be the architects of their own future. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on Bishoftu, because this is one project that is truly shaping tomorrow. See you next time.